Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. Uh, it is the 3rd of April, so we're finally in April. Kind of wish we were doing this on April Fool's Day because we could have had a lot of cool jokes to do, but we're not. It is April 3rd, and we're talking basketball, we're talking football, we're talking other stuff. So we are going to hit all of those topics, but first we have a memory from Yancey, and Yancey, kick us off.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to talk about specifically UFC 10, but really just so I get the chance to talk about Mark Coleman. Before I kick off with the actual memory, I want to talk about what happened to him recently. His parents' house caught on fire. He lives in his parents' house, takes care of his parents, and he actually removed them. His dog ended up passing away, but he was able to save both of his parents. I think he's like 58. And so just a huge, a massive feat for any person to be able to go into a fire, save two human beings, and save most of the family. So I wanted to talk about that for a second, just to kind of shout out Mark Coleman for being an actual hero, since he's not a fireman or anything. And then the memory specifically I want to get to is UFC 10. He fought Don Frye for the first ever UFC heavyweight championship. And this is back in the day when it was a tournament rule set. So instead of fighting a guy and then having 6 weeks to train and fight another guy, you would fight three people in one night. And for a tenth of the money that guys are getting paid now. And he won the fight. I think it was like 7 minutes in, maybe 8 minutes in, he got a TKO, basically getting ground and pound, which is when you have your opponent on the ground and you're able to basically just punch him until the referee decides that guy's not defending himself anymore. It was the kind of one of the last fights before they started introducing more rules into the UFC. So this is back when you could punch a guy in the testicles, rip his ear off, or whatever. Like it was more no holds barred at this point in time, and you had to be kind of crazier and tougher to be participating in the sport. But Mark Coleman went from then all the way up, and I think was preparing for a boxing match at the age of 58. That didn't go through, thankfully. I disagree with the Mike Tyson boxing match that's going to happen and stuff like that. Like, keep grandpas out of the ring. But I think it was an amazing fight that just kind of showed what the UFC had the potential to grow into. And just anytime I get the chance to talk about Mark the Hammer Coleman, I'm gonna. So I appreciate you guys for giving me the chance to put that memory on here. And any thoughts from you guys at all that you want to add on?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about this, so I'm not I don't watch a whole lot of MMA or UFC, and so I had to do my research for this one. I had to watch the clip that you sent over, and owing to my research, I love doing research, and so uh, I delved into Mark Coleman and
Nice.
found out a lot of stuff about him. And so first of all, that clip that you sent over, it was kind of hard to watch because you feel bad for Fry. I can't remember his first name right now, but
Don.
Don Fry, because he beat the crap out of him for 8 minutes, and
That's
so
nothing. There's a pride fight where him and this Asian dude grab the back of each other's heads and punch each other for a minute and 30 straight. It's crazy.
yeah, it was kind of tough to watch for him. You feel bad for the guy because he 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 obviously deserved to be there, but at the same time, he was outmatched in every way.
Yeah.
Uh, reading a little bit about Mark Coleman, finding out that he was one of the first to be able to show that uh, the world of wrestlers could dominate in the sport of mixed martial arts as well, and that's a pretty cool uh, bridge for a guy to make and then for others to follow, kind of a leader in that way. And then as you talked about the saving his parents from the fire, he didn't come out of that unscathed. He was hospitalized in critical
Yeah, he
condition
was in
for
ICU for a few days.
yeah. And so that's pretty impressive to put your life on the line. To obviously it's your parents, it's people you love, and you would hope that all of us would do something like that. But hopefully we're never put into a situation where we have to decide to do that. But he was, and he did. And then about him continuing boxing and all that. I mean, he suffered a heart attack 3 years ago, so I hope this guy it doesn't go
It's not a good
back
look.
into that.
Yeah,
So
it's not a good look. And I hope he doesn't
yeah.
continue his career. We should definitely have some kind of fighter retirement in place, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so I liked watching that. I liked learning about the sport a little bit and learning about the guy, and I I appreciate the chance to do that because I do like doing that kind of research. So yeah,
Yeah, this was good also for me. I find myself like every once in a while when I watch a fight, whether it's UFC or boxing, I'm like, man, I love the sport. I need to watch more, and then I forget about that, and a few months later, I'm like, man, this is great. I need to watch more, and the cycle continues. And so, thanks for the rebirth of the cycle. I'm at the top, like, man, I should watch more UFC. This is great.
300's coming up. I recommend it.
Okay, I'll be on the lookout for that one. And but yeah, it's exciting to revisit, as we have a few times, a foundational member of the sport. UFC 10 and all that it's become. Like you said, up to 300 now, and so it's great.
yeah. Cody, you jumped in late, but we talked about Yancey's memory and the clip that he sent over. Do you have anything to add to our discussion?
Yeah, well, I guess first off, can you guys hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, it says my microphone's muted, so but oh well.
Nope.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure exactly what you guys stated, but I did go back and look at it at the highlights of it. UFC has always been a very interesting, fascinating, and confusing sport for me. So kind of all put together, but it was also just amazing the talent that Mark Coleman, the Hammer, I guess you said his nickname was kind of like Dwayne the Rock or Mark the Hammer kind of thing. Okay. And maybe I didn't understand like the fight very well, but he seemed like he just owned it. He owned the fight. Like I mean, it was what was his name? Don Frye, was that the other guy's name? Was he even a match for this guy?
So Don Frye is also a Hall of Famer, but if you look at those two humans, it was kind of a size thing more than a talent thing. And Mark Coleman is a freak of nature. He has this ability to just get on you and then put stuff on your face. He's going to elbow you or punch you until you're done. And he was like the first Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't know if Dustin, you might be familiar with it. He's a big name in the sport.
Eagle.
Yeah, exactly. He was the first version of that dominance in the pressure. Like he's going to wrestle you. You know what he's going to do. It's a matter of, well, can you stop me? Because I'm going to do it. And he was one of the first guys to put wrestling like on the board as like, oh, okay, you got to watch out for that because that dude will lay on you and punch you in the face for 10 minutes. Yeah, and so it was like he showed like, no, you can use this as a form of defense offensively. Like I'm just going to pound you until you have to give up, schoolyard bully style.
Yeah, I noticed that. So I wrestled in high school. So I did a little bit of wrestling. I recognized some of those wrestling techniques and those moves, and that was actually the first thing I noticed. I was like, wait, am I watching wrestling or am I watching UFC? Then you started punching. Okay, this is UFC.
Imagine I have you in a half Nelson, but I can go a right hook. You know,
that's basically what he was doing. He did the half Nelson and then just cross face and got him out. So it was really it was interesting.
I remember watching the Eagle versus Conor McGregor and saying like, wow, McGregor is so much a better combatant, but Eagle just wrestled with him the whole time and was able to win that fight.
My favorite Khabib quote is, "You fight guys and knock them out. I drag you into deep waters and you discover yourself." That's a dude you don't want to deal with, bro. Like, we're just talking about a fist fight for money. Chill out.
Yeah. Okay, great memory, Yancey, and especially giving us into a sport that we haven't talked about for a while. We had talked about boxing and things like that, but it's been almost a year, I think, since we last talked about uh, the non-traditional main three or four or five sports, and so it's good to revisit those every once in a while and make sure that we give them the coverage that they truly deserve. So, yeah.
Glad to get the chance.
Okay, so we're gonna. A few months ago, we were doing some basketball minutes while football was a big part of in the news and a big part of the season. We're flipping that now. Obviously, basketball is in the spotlight right now, but we have a football minute to talk about here. In fact, two of them. There's two rule changes for the NFL. They're both fairly. One is a little bit more impactful than the other, but they're both important to talk about. First, we want to talk about the banning of the hip drop tackles. If you're not familiar with what a hip drop tackle is, it's where you have a guy wrapped up, but you're not able to bring him to the ground. He's a little stronger, or he's moving forward, and you're having a difficult time putting him down. So you put all of your weight and you drop down to the ground with him holding on, and you lead with your hip. So you're falling to the ground while holding him. I mean, people have been doing it in the NFL for a long time. That's how you tackle something you can't get onto the ground, and it's a fairly successful way to bring someone down. But the problem is that last year there were several serious injuries that were involved in this because when you're doing that, you're usually taking the guy with his momentum and bending his knee backwards as you do it, and that is why the NFL has banned this tackle going forward. Uh, how they're going to officiate that? Some of them are pretty easy to see. Some of them are clearly, oh, that's clearly a hip drop, and several guys got injured last year, some for the season, and so other times it may be a little harder to see. But just curious, first of all, on your thoughts about banning this particular play, this particular tackle. Go ahead,
Yeah,
guys.
I can speak first here. It's as you kind of mentioned, like for years, this was basically the textbook technique on how to tackle, especially when tackling from behind. I mean, this is the way every coach in every high school and college in America taught you how to tackle when you're chasing somebody from behind. And so there's a little bit of this unfairness in that, hey, if this is the best way to get somebody on the ground whenever I'm behind them. But at the same time, obviously, we've discovered in injuries the same way that people change the, hey, don't hit people in the head, right? Which was kind of obvious before, but 20 years ago, that was the way to tackle. And so I'm glad that it's changed for the injuries part of it, but I'm just curious to see how it affects the game in total, because what you hope is that you can increase the safety of the game without decreasing the integrity of the game, and the way defenses can play, and so I'm interested to see how it's going to happen and what techniques chasing down players can do, because now basically the two main ways in that you stop a player that's in front of you are now banned, in the horse collar and the hip drop, and that you basically now have to just try to go shoestring every time, and there's no other way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of that, Dustin. I think that when we look back at the helmet to helmet contact, head on head, there's a lot of evidence. Obviously, CTE, concussions, just a lot of evidence. Neck injuries. We can go on and on about that, of why that's such a dangerous hit and tackle. And we've been able to see over the years that you can still be successful in bringing people down without helmet to helmet contact. And we've seen a decrease in concussions, decrease in neck injuries. So that makes sense that that's been working. So I can see the logic in trying to ban something else related to injuries. Me personally, I haven't seen as many injuries relating to a hip drop tackle as a head on head collision tackle. I also am the person who holds belief that injuries are part of the game. It just happens. It's never good. We don't want that. I understand that. But I think the hip drop tackle, I don't think it needed to be banned. My own personal opinion. I think it's kind of ridiculous. Like you said, Dustin, it's the template of how to tackle when you're running behind someone. So now it's what do? You just reach for their ankles and hopefully they trip over you. I don't know. We're gonna have to see, but I understand why they did it, but I don't agree with it. Not to say not. I think Nick Chubb and Mark Andrews are two big ones who had that injuries, and so I understand. I understand the whole injury part of it, and it's not a good thing they got injured. That sucked. It's really bad. It could be a career ending. I get it. But we also recognize that injuries are part of the game, and hip drop tackle seems to be something that doesn't injure people as often as a helmet to helmet. That's my opinion. I'm curious to hear from you guys as well.
I'm almost like the old man in me, the football player old man in me wants to go to the South Park episode of Sarcastaball, where I'm like, what, are we gonna play with a balloon now? We're gonna keep everybody safe and play with pillows. But I do agree. Look, we don't want $1 million athletes getting injured all the time, but they signed contracts to do it. Like, and I played football as a high schooler. Where's my $100,000 for putting my ignorant self on a field so a bunch of Hoosiers could watch me play football? What, do I get any money for that? I didn't know. So with that, I feel like if you signed up for it, dude, you get injured, shut up. Take your money, shut up, and go off in obscurity like anybody else. Bo Jackson would have been the best running back in the world. Got injured. It is a part of the sport. But I think it's good that they're trying to fix it. But again, the crotchety old man in me is like, let him get hurt. I want to. Where's the violence? And so I can't. I'm not the best guy to take advice from on this because I think let them play. Like you're taking away an entire generation of people who are tackling like that their entire careers, and you're going to hinder them and have 60-point games for a couple of seasons until they figure it out. But that's all I think you really get out of this. It'll be a hiccup until somebody figures out a way around the rule, and then it'll be a new way to injure somebody's legs. So I don't think it'll be all that effective, and I don't think it'll impact the game overall. So the old man in me that's complaining isn't complaining about anything. I don't think the rule changes anything.
It feels almost like I'm the one on one side while the three of you are on another. But let me talk about this for just a second, because I do agree that defenses are already hindered by rules of the game. It's an offensive game. We've seen a lot of touch pass interference calls and holding calls and other things. But so I think everyone gets upset about a defensive call that shouldn't have been made. But I think people get more upset about a call that should have been made that wasn't. And so um, I think defense is still an important aspect of the game, and people are still learning. I love what they did last year to kind of say, offense, you need to play right too. Offensive offsides was a big call last year. Finally saying, offense, you have some things to do as well. And so I do understand that this is another arrow in the heart of some defensive aspects of the game that we don't want to see. At the same time, let me throw some stats at you. There were 230 hip drop tackles league wide last year. 230. As they go back and they do all of the reviews. Obviously, before they brought this to the committee, they did their research. 230 hip drop tackles. Of those 230 tackles, 15 resulted in season-ending injuries. 15. That means that the hip drop tackle was 25 times more injurious than any other tackle on the field. 25 times. So you could be injured at a rate 25 times higher by being hip dropped tackled than by just being tackled regularly. And that's why they brought that to the committee. And that's why they said, this is hugely impactful to our players and we need to change it. And I like that change, but I also understand that it's going to be a problem. It's going to be defense is going to be once again a little bit behind on the offense, and I don't like that aspect. But I think keeping players safe is a little bit more important. Um, of course, again, I'm kind of with some of you saying, let them play. Don't throw a flag when it's just this tiny little minor part of a hip drop tackle. I want to make sure that it has to be that full, all the elements are there, which includes a swivel. I don't know what that means, but it includes a swivel portion of the hip drop. Uh, and so I don't want to see that get out of control where people are being tackled legally and a flag is thrown. So that's what I worry about. So.
Yeah, that's a good statistic. That's roughly 6%. 6 to 7% of these tackles, and it created a season-ending injury. Right? If we talked about 6% of car accidents causing death, that'd be way too high. Right? And so that's an interesting statistic. But 230 hip drop tackles over what is many more games being played shows that this wasn't happening very often to begin with.
Yeah. That's true too.
I think it's overall a good change, but I don't think it'll be much of a change. You know what I mean? It depends on how it gets called. If it gets called well, great. It'll help fix some things. But like Scott was saying, if we got flag happy refs, you could end up making guys gun shy, and you don't want that in a sport that's supposed to be exciting and known for collision and stuff like that,
I think just one last thing, and we move on to the next one. I think what I worry about is this leading to something else, and then that leading to something else, and so on and so forth, to where it's rather than them thinking, being more statistical about it, them being more emotional about it in the future, moving more towards, well, let because we've been that we've seen a lot of injuries from this one, and I'm just afraid of, and this might be kind of ridiculous to think, but let's say in 10 years, are they actually going to start seriously considering flag football? It sounds crazy, but that's an actual concern of mine. That's an actual concern of mine. Is like let's remember what the game really is. Yes, we need to do some protective measures. I get that. I'm all for that, but let's not get crazy about it. Too much.
I mean, we all agree about that. Yeah.
Yeah, in my opinion, and old man Yancey's opinion, quarterbacks are already at a two-hand touch kind of thing. I mean, you don't have to tackle the quarterback to get a sack anymore. That's
all you have to do is tap him on the face mask.
Yeah, no, just to get a sack, if you just there's wrap-up rules for quarterback. If you wrap up the quarterback, it's a sack. Like, that's the rule right now.
My coach used to tell me to take that guy's head off. That's the most important dude to hurt. What are you talking? Get him. That's the one guy you get. Yeah. But again, I'm the last dude you want to talk to about improving it.
Okay, let's talk about the other rule change, and this one was a doozy. So I have some background here. The kickoffs are changing significantly. This is the biggest from one season to another change in NFL history. So if anyone watched the XFL last year, it's going to be almost exactly the same as that kickoff in the XFL. So here's what's going to happen. The kickers will kick off from their own 35-yard line. They used to kick off from the 30. They will be from the 35-yard line, but the kicker will be alone at the 35-yard line. All the other 10 players will start from the opposing team's 40-yard line. So on the other side of the field, where the same side of the field that the returners will be on. The receiving team will have at least 9 players line up in the setup zone between their own 35 and 30-yard lines. So you have pretty much almost every guy, all but 3 guys of the 22. So 19 of the 22 guys are within 10 yards of each other at the beginning of the kickoff. And then there's 2 returners back. The rule is if it is a touchback, then the opposing team, then if you kick it out of 35-yard line instead of the 25. So that's a big deal. That means you pretty much move 15 yards and you're in field goal range. So touchback is a bad thing now. because it was about 90% of kickoffs last year ended in touchbacks. They're removing that completely from the game. And if the ball lands, if it lands or if it's caught, you have to return it. There's no more fair catching. You have to return the kick. And so that's the main parts of the rules. The reason this is being done is players will not be going full speed anymore when they crash into each other in the kickoffs, because that reduces the injuries. That was always the intent for why they were changing the kickoffs to begin with, because the majority of injuries in football happen on kickoffs because people are running full speed into each other. And so this time, the other elements, no one can move until someone catches the ball. No one can move. And so they can only start their return, or that they can only start the play when the returner catches the ball, and then everyone can crash into each other and go. So it's going to create more kickoff return touchdowns. That's definitely going to happen. It's going to create, there's going to practically be no more touchbacks, because it gives the opponent too much field position to already work with. So that's the generally speaking, the new rule for kickoffs. It's a big change. The XFL did it last year. The NFL saw it, and there were almost no injuries on kickoffs, and that's why they decided to implement this for 1 year and see how it works. So, discuss.
I'll go first on this one. There's a lot, so I'll try to condense this. My first thought is, I like football the way it was. I was happy the way it was. I am more okay with this change though than I am with the hip drop tackle change, which is probably kind of weird to a lot of people because this is a much bigger change. I'm more okay with this one because I understand the whole full speed collision injuries. I've seen a lot of injuries happen watching games on kickoffs. This one, in my opinion, doesn't change. What am I trying to say? The whole idea of a kickoff is still the same. The returners going to receive it. They're going to try to tackle him. Some little changes, of course, like you're saying, there'll probably be more touchdowns. There won't be any touchbacks. But in my opinion, there's more of an impact to the game with the hip drop tackle being banned. And so I'm more okay with this change than the other one. And I am I'm curious. I'm very curious to see how this plays in and how it looks.
I'll let you other guys speak, but I'm just going to say I disagree 100% with you, Cody. But I'll talk about it in a second. You guys go.
Yeah, I'll follow that, and I'll say I did not like football the way it was. There were too many things broken with the NFL. For instance, Cody, if you like overtime rules the way you are, get out of here. Overtime is broken. Overtime is bad.
Good point. That's the only one thing I don't like.
Change. I think that kickoffs were also broken, and so this is a change that the most boring part of a football game is the kickoff, and that's unfortunate. It should not be the most boring part. There was a time 10 years ago when it was really exciting, when you saw Devin Hester, Dante Hall, and all these guys do incredible things on kickoffs and punts. And so bringing that opportunity back and actually having these wonderfully skilled players make an impact in the game again, when absolutely they were not making an impact. And so bringing that back is going to be great for the game, and having the opportunity of a special teams touchdown that can totally flip a game on its head, it is going to just make wonders in the game in total. And so I think it's a great change. And I agree with it completely. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this lineup at the 35-yard line is going to work. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I'll let you talk in just a second, Yancey, but I pretty much don't have to say anything. Dustin, I agree with you 100%. So, yeah.
I think, look, what we're trying to do, if me and you boys are the NFL, I'm Roger Goodell or whoever's in charge right now, I don't know. And we're saying, how do we get butts in the seats? Because that whole COVID thing screwed us over. Whenever we locked everybody inside, we weren't selling tickets. What do we do to fix this? points. People like points. People want to see people score points. So let's handicap the defense. The team that just scored, let's handicap them when they kick the ball off and give them a better chance to score more points. John Madden said it best. You got the team that scores more points is going to win the game at the end of the game. That's going to be the team. The one with the most points is going to be the team that wins the game. And those teams are the teams that we root for. And that's how you're going to get me to go into the stadium, is if my team, when Peyton Manning was scoring 50, 60 points a game, I was a fan. And it's going to shift like that to where it's like offense all day. In the 80s, whenever it was defense all day, the Steel Curtain, the Bears, nobody cared because the NFL was broke. Those dudes rode on buses, not jets. And so it's going to be more lucrative. I don't know. The old man in me will probably hate it, like all aspects of the change, but that's because I'm getting old. It doesn't mean that I'm right. I think that it will be more exciting in the end, and it's probably better changes. There's science behind this now. Like, we can watch how fast that dude was moving when he hit that dude. We can freeze frame and see how his leg turned and see why a swivel is important in a tackle. Like, we live in the future now, boys. It's kind of silly to be like, no, let them bash heads. Come on, we're billy goats. Like, I get it. So I have to separate the two Yanceys in me. The one that's like, don't let him drive. And the other one that's like, come on, bro, I'm a race car driver. You know what I mean? So I think overall, I agree with the rational side of you guys. Like, yeah, totally. Save these dudes from themselves, because I wish somebody was like, Yancey, chill, dude. You're okay. Like, it's good. Chill. But the savage in me is like, let them bash heads. Like, I'm about it. So overall, I think it'll be more exciting to watch. I don't think, again, I don't think it changes a whole lot more than you're shifting the weight to the offensive perspective. That's it.
I think there will be a little more head bashing in kickoffs because people are going to return in kickoffs. And so if you get one guy who just, puts a move on the defender, breaks his ankles the old fashioned way and gets past, and you got a one-on-one with that returner who doesn't know what to do anymore. And you get a big old good tackle right there. That's exciting, that we like to see.
With 10
more of that
in him, though.
Well, he'll be from front.
That's why 40 times are important, not 10-yard times.
Yeah, and I don't really have to add anything to what Dustin said, but I will say one thing that I'll emphasize one thing that Dustin said, and that is that the kickoff returners are suddenly important again. Previously, like last year, there were kickoff returner, like that was their job for years. They were cut. They didn't have a job last year. Devin Hester, if he was playing the last couple of years, would never be considered for the Hall of Fame at this point, because that was his job, and now that skill is once again going to be valued incredibly, as well as setting up for returns. Like, there's probably players that were drafted in the last couple of years that they didn't work on special teams blocking, setting up the wedge for the kickoff return, because I think only 7% of kicks were returned last year. 7%. And so it's just not something to spend your time on. Punt returns, yes, that because that's a little bit more, but kickoffs were never. And so this is going to increase the value of that skill again. And I really like that aspect, as well as the overall special teams as an important aspect of the game.
So there's a fairly equal chance in seeing somebody's leg get bent over backwards as seeing a kick return. So more kick returns, more legs get bent backwards.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back on your side. You got broken limbs, Dustin.
I mean, yeah, there's going to be more collisions than obviously, and so more potential for injury, and so it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of a thing. But we'll see, and we'll check in halfway through the season about what this rule is going, or maybe before that if we see more. Okay, we're finally in basketball. we're going to talk first about the women's March Madness. And let me say this: I told it to the guys before we jumped on. Cody wasn't here yet, but if you didn't know, this is the first year ever that more people have been watching the women's national tournament than the men's. It is much more popular for viewers right now. It's more exciting. You have some really, really good players in the women's national in the women's March Madness right now, and a lot more people are tuning in than ever before, and it seems to be more popular than the men's side of the tournament, for good or for bad. But I think it's for good, giving these women the attention that they deserve. So let's jump in here. Just point out some things and talk about these things. So first thing I want to mention is that this is the first time that there are two of the exact same teams in the Final Four for the men and the women. They're both UConn and NC State are playing in the Final Four for both the women and the men, and if they both win, they could both be playing for the national championship as well on both sides of the women and the men. That's pretty cool. UConn has been there more than any other team in women's basketball. They're not a stranger to Final Four for women's. South Carolina is still undefeated, although they blew a 20-point lead against Indiana and almost lost. But they were able to win there. This was a rematch here, Iowa and LSU, of last year's national championship game, and Iowa this time got the better of them. Caitlin Clark has been just insane to watch. I don't know if any of you watched that game, Iowa versus LSU. Caitlin Clark scored 41 points. She hit 11 three-pointers in that game, or 10, I think. She was just insane to watch in that game. She reminds me a lot of watching Jimmer Fredette for BYU. She scores from the logo. She makes three-pointers from half court almost, and there's nothing you can do. There's players that are just throwing their hands up saying, how did she make that shot? And everyone in the country seems to be cheering for Iowa and Caitlin Clark to win everything, including this guy right here. But it seems like a really, really fun tournament to watch so far. Do you guys have any thoughts about the women's tournament?
I'd just say that, yeah, Caitlin Clark has made women's basketball what it has been this year, and one of the more popular sports this year. And is all around Caitlin Clark, that she's done to it what Stephen Curry did to the NBA 10 years ago. And so it's exciting. And I watched the highlights of that Iowa LSU game, and that was so intense and so fun to watch. And so it's great that there's such intensity in the women's tournament and that it's fun to watch. So go Iowa.
I don't know if I have anything really to add to that.
Yeah, it is great. I'm not gonna grandstand or act like I watch women's sports because I really don't. I don't know a ton about it. It is great that they are getting attention, but I'm ignorant to who's good, who's not. And all I really know is like surface level stuff that I've seen on Facebook, and I'm not going to pretend like I know something I don't.
Yeah. It definitely has been fun, and everyone wants to see if South Carolina is going to go undefeated the whole way. They haven't lost a game this year. They're in the Final Four. They play NC State for the Final Four. Iowa plays UConn. Everyone has been counting on a South Carolina versus Iowa national championship game. That may happen, but those two teams have to beat two other really good teams first. So
Undefeated is incredible in any sport. I do have to turn my hat to that. That's incredible, especially basketball, because it's so easy to find somebody that can be competitive throughout a game and keep it close. So that's impressive to say the least.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to switch screens here. Share my screen again. I think it's this one. Are you seeing my bracket?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Yeah, so let's see. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is the one that I've been keeping track for us. Obviously, the reddish orange is the one that we initially said as a group, and we were wrong. If it's just blue on the line, then that's the one we got right. Um, we're all wrong up here. And look, if you can see, NC State has never been a majority pick in this whole tournament for any of us. I mean, I believe in NC State from the beginning. I have 3 brackets here sitting right below my left where I have NC State right here. I have 3 of them. I believed in them because they were so hot going into the ACC. I mean, I have like 5 other brackets that have them losing the first round too, but don't worry about those. So, but we haven't believed in NC State as a majority group, and I don't know if we still do. A lot of us haven't believed in Purdue either, but they beat Tennessee, which was an impressive. Zach Edey seems like he dominates. 7'4" guy that rebounds every shot and can score from 5 feet in, no matter who's on him. And then you got Alabama, who beat North Carolina, and they score 107 points a game or whatever it is here. They've scored 89 in back-to-back games. They're hard to stop. And then, of course, UConn, who has obviously they won the national championship last year. They're looking to be a first repeat since 06, 07. And in all of their tournament games since last year, they've won by at least 10 points every single time, every single game. They have not had, they've won by double digits. And most of them, I think they've averaged 22 or 23 points per win in every tournament game since last year. So no one stays close to UConn. Will it change this year? So do you guys want to talk about any of these Sweet 16, Elite 8 games, things like that before we head to Final Four?
We talked about it offline, but UConn went on a 30-0 run. I mean,
that was
they
insane.
opened
I've
up
never
that
seen anything like it.
second half and just like, I mean, the can was open and there was plenty of stuff coming out of it. The can was fully open.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. You have to play extremely well, and boy, Illinois has to just not show up or worse to be outscored 30-0 in a half. But you got to give props to both UConn and the opposite of props, whatever that word is, to Illinois.
You remember in Waterboy when they're like, and now around the league they're trying to put their towel boy in. I think that's what Illinois did in halftime. They were like, let's try the towel boys, because that was an entirely different team. They weren't playing well in the first half, if we're being honest. They were missing shots they shouldn't have missed, and they were making some mistakes, but they were with UConn. But that second half, they just didn't show up. Like they were gone. It was 30-point run. Like what are we doing here?
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, and then to make a comment about Purdue and Zach Edey is it's been incredible. And watching that, I've been kind of cheering against Purdue because they have this great player who I want to see go down and who I don't really believe in, but I've said that before. And it's kind of like let's just stop letting him get to the post. It's just like you let him get position and he's going to score 40 points on you like he did. And he kept getting in position, kept getting position. I'm like, you got to put some more muscle on that guy. And just like, as soon as he crosses that 3-point line, just put a hip in his knee, because that's about where it is. But you just got to try harder. Deny.
That's the one I want to talk about a little bit too. Tennessee Purdue. That's one I watched, and I was really curious to see how Tennessee would react to Zach Edey, and watching it, their strategy was really get Eddie the ball, and either he's going to make it or he's going to get fouled, and then he's going to make it. And that's just all it was, is like, give him the ball, and then they had to put 2 or 3 players on him to try to get the ball, and he gets fouled. That's all it was all game long. And I'm just thinking, Is there a way around that, or is it just that unfair to have basically Yao Ming Part Two, on this team, and so that's the strategy here, and I wonder if is there a way around that strategy? Maybe there is, but I mean, I I don't know. This guy's a freaking monster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the strategy is you get a guy that's 7'3" plus, you stick him down there, and you say, if he scores more than 20 points, I'm benching you, bro. Period. And that's it. You have to get somebody who's determined and fearful for their job to stop that dude from scoring. And I don't even think that matters, because how many people in college really measure up with this guy? If we're just looking at it from a number standpoint, that's going to be tough to stop, because when you do get somebody down there to stop him, it's probably going to be two somebodies. You're opening up the inside out basketball, which is exactly what you want as a coach. So, I mean, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're in trouble against a guy like that, because there's not, if you can't slow him down, there's no stopping the team.
I want to touch on two. Dustin, you first.
If I was a coach, if I was NC State's coach, what I'd do is I'd take my centers, my power forwards, sit them down and say, hey, you're going to watch a whole lot of film on Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green and Ben Wallace. Undersized defenders. Dennis Rodman was 6'7" and was one of the greatest defenders to ever step on the court. And same with Draymond Green, 6'7", 6'8", Ben Wallace a little taller than that, but undersized guys who were just muscular and big, and say, I'm not going to let you get to your spot. You're going to wrestle me all the way there.
What was that crazy ice skater's name? She went and hit a lady with a leg.
Something.
Tanya Harding. Yes.
Boom. There you go. She was on World's Dumbest Criminals for a long time. There's my strategy. Hey, here's $50. See that tall guy over there at the bar?
There's two things I want to mention about Purdue. One is what Yancey said about the inside out. Did you know Purdue is the best 3-point shooting team in the country by percentage?
Nobody's guarding them. They're all
they shoot about 41% as a team from three, and that's what they've been doing is inside out basketball, and they make their threes, and so they're really dangerous. It's not just Zach Edey, it's these other guys that can make those 3-point shots. I mean, like Yancey said, when they're wide open, if I'm wide open, I can make about 30% of them. So, which is good for me, but I'm not a college basketball player. Anyway, but that's when I'm, wide open. And 30% is probably really generous. I'm probably more like 20%. Anyway, I digress. The other thing about Purdue I want to mention, Zach Edey, he not only leads the country in scoring, he scores about 25 points per game, which leads the country. He also leads the country by a ridiculous margin in free throws attempted and free throws made. That's part of his game. He gets to the free throw line. He's not the greatest free throw shooter, but he's about 72%, which is not bad. It means you make 3 out of every 4. And that was the case. He scored about half of his points against Tennessee at the free throw line. And that's a tough thing to do. He's a tough officiating because he's really physical down there. And when you're physical, especially in a game that values offense, you're going to get to the free throw line. And so you have to figure out a way to help that, but you can't just let him score. You can't let him walk up to the rim. So you have to play some kind of defense, but it's really difficult. It's a difficult team to guard, and they're going to be tough for NC State. You have that big guy against NC State. Remember that we watched against Oakland. He might be able to slow him down a little bit. He's nowhere near as tall, but he's pretty dang big too.
And I'm not sure if we're talking about those matchups yet, but that's what I'm really excited for is the DJ Burns and Zach Edey matchup. Burns is 6'9", 6'10", so he's like he's the closest you can get, and yet he's still 5 or 6 inches shorter. But I mean, he's probably around the same weight. In all honesty, probably around the same weight, and so That is what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm most excited about, is that specific matchup, to see if he can win that matchup, NC State has a really good chance of winning that game.
Yeah. We didn't mention NC State versus Duke. NC State upsetting Duke. That's a rematch of the ACC tournament. NC State's won 9 straight games, and what's crazy, if NC State lost any of the games in the ACC tournament, they wouldn't even be here. It was win and get in for the ACC tournament. They had no chance to get in if they did not win the whole damn thing in their ACC tournament, and they did. And then not only that, but they've won. They beat Texas Tech. They beat Oakland. They beat Marquette, and then they beat Duke again, who they beat in the ACC tournament to get here. So, like, don't count these kids out. They're yeah, they're going to do everything to try and beat you. And the last team that we haven't talked, unless you guys want to talk more about that game, or the one that they beat Marquette in too. But the other one that I wanted to mention, we haven't talked about Alabama yet, or Clemson for that matter, who beat Arizona to get to this point. Clemson beat Arizona, and then Alabama finally put away Clemson. I think we're talking about football here when we're Alabama versus Clemson in the playoffs. But it was a basketball game, and Alabama just had too much offense. So, yeah. Anything you guys want to mention about any of those before we move on to matchups?
I mean, one thing, and this isn't directly about those games, but I just been thinking, how unfair is it that there's a juggernaut Alabama in football, now they're in the Final Four, and then their baseball team is one of the best baseball teams as well. I mean, like, come on, like, this athletic department is insane.
In my opinion, that's not a school. It's a recreation league disguised as a school.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. Yeah.
There's a lot of farms in Alabama. Just one of them is for sports. What do you want? It's called a university.
Okay, let's talk about these matchups. UConn, the defending national champion, who no one gets close to apparently, against Alabama, who will literally run you out of the gym and score points on you by bunches. That could be an interesting game. UConn versus Alabama. What do you guys think?
I don't see how anyone beats UConn. I just nobody's gotten close. I don't see it happening again.
Yeah, I have to echo it. I mean, I got them in all my top bracket has UConn winning, and they've lived up. They played well. Alabama does score, and they play fast basketball. So if they kind of caught UConn off there on the heels early, possible, but I don't see that going down. I got UConn.
I was going to say a similar thing. Alabama has also allowed teams to score on them quite a bit. It's not like they're a great defensive team, and UConn is. Illinois is the same kind of style that Alabama runs. Very fast offense and a very good offense, and they scored 23 points at halftime. And so I see a similar thing. I don't see Alabama getting within 15 in final score here.
Yeah, I think that coaching causes that problem. The way UConn adjusted to Illinois is what I see happening to Alabama.
Cody, what was your thought?
I agree that UConn is going to win this game, but the thing I disagree with is that I do think it's going to be a close game. I do think that Alabama's coming in hot, and it's going to be I think it's going to be within 7 or 8 points of each other.
Maybe at halftime.
Okay. And now we talk about the Cinderella team and Cinderella NC State. They've been playing do or die basketball for more than a month now. They lost 4 straight games to end the regular season, and then they've done this, winning a bunch of games to get here. So the Cinderella team, NC State, against the Purdue-led Zach Edey, and against the team that believes that they can do the same thing that Virginia did, which was lose that 1-16 matchup one year and then win the national championship the next. So they're trying to do that exact same thing. NC State versus Purdue. We haven't believed in NC State once in this tournament. Do we believe in them now or not?
You might as well call Purdue midnight. It's over, baby. Ain't no Cinderella story tonight. I'm going Purdue.
I hate to keep going against NC State, but this is a matchup that I think Purdue's going to win. I think that Zach Edey is too big. He's too skilled, and that NC State's going to do. They're a really good defensive team, but you're going to open up too many of those 3-point shots as well for Purdue. I think it'll be close, a lot closer than this other side of the bracket, but I still got Purdue.
I think that as I said before, it's in my opinion, it's all about the Burns Edey matchup. If Burns is able to contain Edey, I think that NC State could win this game. But Edey knows how to get fouled. He knows how to get fouled, and for that reason, he's going to be at that free throw all night long, and Purdue's going to win that game because of that.
We've got a majority, but Dustin, what do you have to say?
Yeah, a lot of the same thoughts as having watched a lot of Purdue games this tournament, I have a hard time seeing how NC State's going to slow them down, how they're going to be able to take a lead and control it. Regardless of my opinions, I think Zach Edey's going to make a wonderful player in China next year. That's that's my opinion. He's going to be a great player in China. But I think that he's also going to be a great player on Saturday, and so gonna win.
Yeah, there's parts of that I wanted to talk about, but didn't think I wanted to mention it here, and that was how would Zach Edey's game transition to the NBA, because the NBA, Zach Edey's a slow guy. He's not going to match up with the speed of the NBA, and no longer do you have the Shaquille O'Neals or the Dwight Howards that are just down there in the paint scoring every time. That kind of style does not exist in the NBA anymore. And will he play in that? So I think he'll get drafted, but who knows how?
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the players who are super big and focused on defense. Let's talk about Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is super athletic. He's fast and athletic, and you just don't have the slow guys. You don't have the Mark Eatons anymore. They don't exist because the NBA has absolutely no use for them. And Zach Edey is closer to a Mark Eaton than anybody else.
Great comp. I think they're the exact same height and the exact same kind of player. So yeah, that's a good comparison. Okay, national championship game here. This is a boring tournament if we have a 1 versus a 1 in the national tournament in the NCAA tournament, but that's the way that this tournament has gone. There's not been a lot of major upsets except for NC State getting to the Final Four, which is pretty cool. But other than that, it's been pretty lame about very few upsets in this tournament. But UConn versus Purdue. Do we have a UConn team that's going to win back-to-back championships, or do we got a Purdue team that has something to say about that?
It's going back to back. UConn's too fast, too athletic. They're going to beat Edey down the court.
I was waiting for someone else to go, but I'll go and I'll second that. I'll say UConn is just too good. Although I think this tournament game will be the first tournament game that UConn plays that's going to be in single digits to end the game. I think it'll be closer.
I mean, I guess I have to ask a question first. Who's the biggest guy on UConn?
They have a giant.
They have a 7-footer. He's 7'1", I think. David Klingon, I think his name is. And did you watch that game against Illinois where he blocked like 17 shots or whatever it was?
I watched the first half. Unfortunately, I didn't catch the 30-point thing.
Well, even in the first half, he was like Illinois kept going at him and trying to beat him up in the inside. He swatted everything away like it was a fly, and so like they have a big guy that can match up against Edey, and I think that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's faster too.
Yeah.
But Edey knows how to get fouled. At that point, I was just watching that Tennessee game. He just get fouled like every freaking play, and that was just annoying to me. And so, I don't know. I really don't know. I could see it going either way right now. I'm gonna say Purdue just to mess things up right now.
Yeah, Yancey, are you doubling us up or are you going UConn?
Look, as much as I want Purdue to win, it's not going to happen. It's UConn. They have the weapons to match up with Purdue where Purdue is strong, and from what I saw, look, if a team can strangle you on defense like that and go put up 30 points without you getting a bucket, that's special. That's important, and if you can duplicate anything like that in the next game, it's going to be UConn. And I just think that since they have the weapons to match up and they're a well-coached team, I think they do it twice. Make some history again.
And I want to state that I actually have I have two brackets, one with UConn winning and one with Purdue winning. So that works out pretty well for me there.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Okay.
I got teams like Kansas and Tennessee and North Carolina.
I don't have any of these Final Four teams. My main one I don't think any of these Final Four are in it. I do have UConn in my Final Four in my main bracket, but I have them losing to Baylor, I think, in my main bracket. But
In our group, I have the top 3 spots. I want to point that out. And I don't even know nothing about basketball.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. Yeah. Okay, let's do, rather than do total points, let's predict a final score here and see how close we are. These two teams may not be playing, but so let's see here. Actually, let's just go total points. That's easier with this group. So, what are you guys saying? Like, I think this will be a little bit more high scoring, probably in the 70s. So I'm going to go 160 points.
I was going to say 165.
Okay.
I'd say 171.
I'm in the same neighborhood with you boys. I'm in the 160s.
Okay, so I said 160. Dustin said 165. Cody said 171. What do you want to say, Yancey? Give us a number.
163.
163. I'm taking the average. That average is, guess what, Dustin? 165 is the average of this. Technically 164.5, but I'm rounding up.
That does. Wait, Cody, what did you say?
171.
Okay, that makes sense now. I was thinking it was lower. Never mind. We're good.
Technically, the average is 164.75. So
that's my new number.
Yeah. They're going to score
get out of here,
3/4 of a point. So, yeah.
Break out the decimals.
It's a buzzer beater.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that we'll see about this, and next week we'll recap the Final Four and the national championship game. We'll also talk about the last week of the regular season of the NBA, which will be and where teams are matching up. So far, the Celtics have clinched not only their division, but certainly a playoff berth, and probably are going to clinch first seed pretty soon here.
Yeah.
And in the West, I don't think anyone's actually clinched. No, Thunder have clinched. The playoff spot. So
I think in the NBA in the West, 6 or 7 teams have clinched a playoff spot, but it could still be anywhere between 1 and 10. Like it's just so close in the West.
Yeah. So, but that's what we'll do next week. Maybe another 1 or 2 things thrown in there. But anyone have anything else to say about any of the things we talked about today? I'm gonna stop sharing.
Go basketball. Okay. It's the most exciting time for basketball. March Madness straight into NBA playoffs over the next couple months.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. So, okay, guys, talk to you next week.